But I'll start this off by giving you a little background from my point of view. My name is Michael Caine. No, I'm not Michael Caine, sorry, I got mixed up there. My name is Paul Blake, and I played a little character called Greedo in a movie quite a long time ago. So I'll give you just a couple of seconds, background of how I got the job, and then we'll get that out of the way. And by the way, he shot first, so that's got that out of the way now.
I need to ask that question.
Well, there goes my question.
But I first got involved with Star Wars because I was working with Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO. And we were working together for the BBC on a kids show called Jack and Nori. And I was at home one night with my then girlfriend, now wife. We've been together a long time. My God, it's been 40 years. Anyway, that's something else. But anyway, he rang me up and said, Paul, I hope you don't mind me bringing this late in the evening, but I'm doing this film. It's a sci-fi film. And the director's asked me if I know of any other actors who might be interested in doing it. And do you fancy it? And I went, oh God. Because you've got to remember, 1976, every sci-fi film ever made was a B movie. So we thought we were all going to be in Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So this was not thrilling news to have a film. But as Tim says, it would pay the rent. So I said, yeah, fine, I'll pop along. So he said, can you come down to Elstree Studios, which is studios just outside London, in a couple of days' time, and meet the director? I said, yeah, I'd love to, thanks. So 2 days later, I found myself coming into Elstree, onto a big soundstage very early in the morning. There was nobody there, but at the far end of the room, I could see this mock-up of the Millennium Falcon. I say it's a mock-up, it was really just two paintings on two flats with a ramp in the middle going up, and you walked up the ramp and then you fell off the back. That's how crude it was in 1976. But there was nobody there, and I'd just come all the way from central London. But there was a bloke in the far corner, so I went up to him and said, hi, I'm Paul, you couldn't get me a cup of coffee, could you? I'm desperate for a cup of coffee because I haven't had any breakfast this morning. So he went off, got me a coffee, white, by the way, with one sugar. And,
if anybody wants to.
Just the detail is all important, to Tim, all those things. So he got me the coffee, and I said, look, I'm here to see some guy about some terrible sci-fi film or other. He's George. He said, I'm George.
So a good start.
So a good start to Star Wars. And he for some reason, he must have been desperate, because he still gave me the job. But that's how I got involved. Tim, would you like to say a couple of things about your involvement?
Previous to my involvement with Star Wars, I was working with Jim Henson in the Muppets. And I wanted to be a puppeteer on Fragment Rock. But Jim felt, at the time, I thought that he said it because it wasn't a good enough puppeteer, but I realized later, he said that my true value to Muppets was the animatronic work that I did, because I designed a lot of the characters and animatronics for the things. And so as a young guy, I was hurt, and I decided I was going to leave the Muppets. And I was sitting in my apartment in New York City going, what the hell have you done? The only thing you've ever wanted to do is puppets, and you just left the biggest puppet company in the world. You must be out of your mind. Then my telephone rang, and a friend of mine, Mike, who was working with Phil Tippett, building things for Return of the Jedi, he had just fallen off the scaffolding in the workshop and broke his arm. And he said, Tim, they're looking for somebody to take my place out here, and if you get out here to California, maybe you can get a job. So I spoke to a man, Warren Franklin, and he said, well, we don't want to fly clear out from New York just for an interview. And I said, I tell you what, I'll do a deal with you. I'll pay for my own flight out to California, and if you want to hire me on the job, then you can reimburse me, but if you don't want me on the job, you don't lose anything. And he thought, oh, I like that. That's a deal. So I flew out, got the interview, and got a job working in Phil Tippett's workshop. So the first job that I had on the movie was building the characters, but also puppeteering Salacious Crumb. And there was a big red alien thing sitting in the corner, and I said, so what's that? And they said, oh, that's a background character who shows up later in the movie. And I said, oh, can I do him as well? And they said, yeah, okay, you can. And so that was the sum total of my audition for Admiral Ackbar. I'd like to say I auditioned against thousands of people and I was so good. But no, it's just being in the right place at the right time at the end of the day. So that was how I got it.
So that's our little background of how we got the job. Would you like to take over from here?
I absolutely can if you like, unless you guys got another story for us. That was fun.
We could keep you here all day, but it
The
depends how
sun will
much.
be going down by the time we finish.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we can't do all day as much as I'd love to.
It depends how much the guys want to ask us, really, and then maybe it depends on how well they behave. Jeremy Bullock and I used to do a few things with you guys in doing our scene, but you do it for us. So maybe in a short while we might ask, it all depends, how things go, but we might ask you to do our scene for us, okay? So behave yourselves, otherwise I'm going to put you on the spot. Right?
All right. Well, since Paul already answered my question, who shot first? Anybody have any questions?
Well, you all know, you've all got an opinion about this. Everyone who ever comes to have a chat with me has an opinion about it.
How were the masks articulated back then?
Yeah, my mask, it's a very good question. My mask wasn't articulated at all. It was just a life mask. We sat in the design department's workshop and had a plaster of Paris base put on the front and on the back, and then they used to pour a sort of India rubber solution in it, which then was the shape of your head. They handed that over to the designer, and he then built up whatever alien they decided to come up with. So in those days, much more primitive, but even looking back on the original movies today, they still hold up pretty well, I think, for masks. And my mask finished there, so you could take it off. And I remember the props table at Hell Street had 100 alien heads on the table. And of course, being actors, we all had to try on everybody else's head, which was pretty cool until you actually got it on. And most people think it was hot inside these things. It wasn't hot, it stank. That was the only problem. They smelled to high heaven, so you didn't keep them on for very long. But about the articulation, no, my mask wouldn't move. That was added on about 8 months later by Lucasfilm. Yeah, but I think my mask was animatronic, which made the ears move and the nose wiggle. But that certainly wasn't done when I was there.
What about Ackbar?
Well, what I did was, at that time, the standard thing was you'd have the full body suit for establishing shots, and then they would take the head and mount it on a tabletop and put all the cables and everything out of it, and that's how you'd get the close-up. But the problem with that was then you'd end up only being able to get little strip shot close-ups because the head didn't move, only the face did. And I had been working with Rick Baker on the Greystoke movie, and I tried to talk him into letting me do the close-up 8 as a hand puppet. And oh, no, we can't do that. So I was really hurt because I knew it would work. And I went to Phil and they said the same thing, and I pulled Ackbar off and I just put him on my hand and showed him how that worked. And he said, yeah, run with it. So the Ackbar, most of what you see with Ackbar was actually a half-body hand puppet with my head inside the body, and I had a monitor I could see, and then I operated the mouth like that. And Mike Quinn, who was also 9-9, he would be hiding on the floor someplace, and he would operate the cables to make the nostrils go and the eyes blink and do all the other things. And of course now we move on to the Force Awakens, and now I've got my carbon fiber helmet on with 38 servos. So if you imagine putting your head inside a cage full of budgies, you got 38 servos all going like while you're trying to hear what the director's saying and all that. So it is a whole different ball of wax now in the world of animatronics.
So are you actuating anything in that helmet, or is it all being done by remote?
It's all being done, the whole face and everything is now done by remote.
Which character is that you're talking about?
Admiral Ackbar?
No, the one with the servos in the head.
The one with the servos, too.
Oh no, that is Ackbar in the Force Awakens.
Oh, is it?
now.
Okay. So it's just completely.
So the original Ackbar, we had 2 versions to get all the shots, and now it's all done by the one character.
Thanks, guys.
Anybody else? Any more for any more? Sir?
Oh. What was it like working with Sir Alec Guinness?
Ah, well, thank you for that. What was it like working with Sir Alec Guinness? Very good question. I was really lucky because I had actually worked with Sir Alec. You had to call him Sir Alec until he said, "Call me Alec, dear boy." Then you knew it was okay and you kind of made it. But I was lucky enough. I was in a play in the West End in London in which he was starring, and I was understudying in that place. So he knew me. And so when I walked onto set the first day, and of course Harrison and Carrie and Mark were all very young actors and they were relatively unknown. Carrie not so much because of her illustrious parents, Debbie and Eddie Fisher. But Mark and Harrison certainly were very unknown. But Alex saw me across the room and went, "Paul, hello!" So I felt very smug at that point that I actually had known him. But of course you kind of got to remember that he was the godfather of movies at that time. He was the big box office draw as far as Lucasfilm were concerned. He was the real hit. And I'm sure you must all know the story about where he got paid a pittance on the first movie, not very much at all. But George was kind enough to offer him a tiny percentage of the gross. And Alec didn't know what on earth that meant. And he went away, did the movie, and he was marvellous on the film and was charming, and as you'd imagine. And then about a year later, he received his first royalty check from Lucasfilm. And from that point onwards, when his agent mentioned about doing other stuff and carrying on doing the trilogy at that point, he always brought up the percentage. And I think now at this point in time, his estate still receives a vast sum of money. And that percentage, that first check, was possibly worth more than anything else he made during the course of his career, which had been 40 years up until that point in time. Yeah, absolutely. It was only about 25%. But he was a charming man. He was a nice guy.
Mr. Rose, I was going to ask you how you got your start with the Henson company and what you did when you started with Jim Henson.
Before I went to work for the Muppets, I was doing my own bank puppet booth in the northeast of America. And it was a puppet booth I could sit on my shoulders, and I did the true story of Prince George and the Dragon, which a young guy, Ben Johnson, saw as a kid, and then he wrote a film called Dragonheart. He nicked my puppet show, basically. Because it turned out the dragon was a good guy, but everybody always misjudged him because he was scary looking and all. So it was that whole thing of the two of them ended up working together to run this scam of, I'll save you from the dragon rating. And I was doing that show, and I saw the Muppets on TV because they'd already started doing the Muppet show before I went to work for them. And my first effort to work for them, I was taken down from upstate New York on the train with my puppet booth, but I was such a shy kid that I put the booth on and then walked into reception, and the dragon gave them my resume, and I never heard from him again. But then when I graduated from university, I was working in New York City doing lighting for Broadway and off-Broadway shows, and I heard from a friend that they were having problems filling the workshop and they were looking for people who could do that sort of thing. And although I have a university education, I've earned my living because my dad was in radio-controlled airplanes. So I already knew how to plug in servos. I'd always been making stuff on the workshop floor. So when I went in to go to work for him and start what we now call as animatronics, I just had that foot up because of what my dad had taught me, working in the workshop. And I was able to, I worked with a man, Salacious, who had worked out how to make Kermit ride a bicycle for the very first movie. And of course, everybody talked about Kermit on a bicycle, so Jim just wanted more stuff. He wanted more of this stuff that everybody talked about. And the story I like the best is the Muppet Show was filmed in the UK because none of the American companies thought it would ever amount to anything. Puppets are for kids, you know, they wouldn't do the show. So it was Lou Gray in the UK that gave Jim his break to do the Muppet Show. But he wanted to get his New York shop over there, the guys who knew what they were doing around him to build the stuff. But the British film industry was in one of its continual nosedives, so they didn't want any foreigners coming in. So this British producer said, well, I know what we'll do. We'll give you guys a title that doesn't exist in the UK, and they called us animatronics designers. So we were doing something that needed a name, but we were actually doing it before it had a name. So I'm actually Britain's oldest animatronics designer, because I was the first one.
What are your thoughts on Admiral Ackbar from Rogue One?
Poor guy. Paul, if you can imagine, he's inside one of these animatronic heads with 38, 39 servos in there. He's out on, they nicked my chair, didn't they? They nicked Ackbar's chair for Grotus because he was on one of those pods that swung out and swung back. And because there's so many servos, there's no place left to give him any vision. Now, on some of the days filming, we were in our costumes for 8 solid hours without even lunch break. And he was completely in the dark with a costume that had a hole maybe that big to try and suck any fresh air in through. And he just did it. So you're dealing with sensory deprivation, your entire body's at 102, 103 degrees the whole time, drenched in sweat. He earned his money for doing that character. I thought Grotus was a great character, good fun. I was Sholan, by the way. I was his assistant over on the right side. And we didn't have names while we were on set. We just had serial numbers because everything is so secret now. You know, nothing can be allowed, nothing can be told. So my character's name on set was called Milky Bar. in England, we have a commercial, the Milky Bar Kid. So because I was Ackbar originally, and because he was white, I was called Milky Bar on set. So.
Just to follow you up on that one, do you think, like, compared to back then with, like, the Jedi and all that stuff, and, like, the way movies are made now, do you think it's taken the fun out of puppeteering and all that kind of stuff, or do you think it's made it more interesting, like, you can do more with it? Sorry,
You can be honest.
I certainly, I was allowed to personally put much more involvement in Ackbar because I was coming from Muppets and they didn't know how to do puppets, so they actually turned to me to find out how to do things. And now, ironically, I think with the animatronics we've done too good a job because they've started treating us like actors. But an animatronic character, no matter how good you are as an actor, we need special help just from the fact we can't see what we're doing. You know, you have to do animatronic characters like a special effect. You have to plan it all out and get all the edits together, and then the character really lives in the final edit. And they tend to just sort of bring us on and plunk us down and expect these things to be magic now. You know, they've forgotten how to shoot animatronics, basically. After Jim died, I feel personally, but that's my own.
So as a puppeteer, would you almost prefer to be outside the puppet now and controlling it remotely, or do you still want to be inside? Is it very different from remotely operating it versus
I look on it as a whole palette of techniques and tricks. It would depend on what that character is. Certainly I had a lot more fun with Salacious so half the time he didn't even know who it was he was talking to. I had John Boyega come up to me one day on something coming up. And I'm chatting away to him, and all of a sudden I went, "Oh, hey, John, I didn't, I didn't even know it was you." You know, so. Yeah, you need help inside of there, because you need other people to let you know what it is you're doing all the time. So.
Anybody else?
Question for both of you. What are you most proud of in your career?
What are we most proud
What piece of
of?
work did you did you feel most proud of?
Well, when I was very young, which was a long, long while ago, you know, certainly a galaxy many, many miles away now, I was a very serious actor, and I kind of wanted to do Shakespeare and that sort of stuff. And I was lucky enough to do it, and I worked for all the major companies, and I played Macbeth, and I played Banquo, and I played Lysander, and I played Claudia and Demetrius. I've been in Proust. I ran my own theatre company for 7 years. I worked in Hong Kong on movies there, and I've done a bit of telly in England, and I did lots of audio books, all that sort of stuff. But on my tombstone, it will say, "Here lies Greedo, who shot first?" And that's pretty cool. So I think I'm still proudest of having been in possibly the most iconic film of all time. I mean, who wouldn't? What actor wouldn't say how wonderful it was to be in it? It's kind of like being in Casablanca or The Wizard of Oz from our point of view. We were very lucky to be at that point in time and that moment in time. And of course, they were very lucky to have us, weren't they, Tim?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ironically, the one I'm the proudest of, although it was a flawed piece definitely, was how it was done. And the reason being was that at that time, animatronic characters tended to be the cute little whatever that sat on the shelf just as sideline entertainment. But Howard was the leading man of the movie. But he was a puppet. And the thing I couldn't understand, I got brought in, they'd been working on this duck for 7 months, and they didn't have a duck that worked. So George went to Jim, said, "What do we do about this?" And Jim says, "I tell you what, you take Tim and Tad over there, you know, and they'll see if they can do something and help you out there." So they brought us in to troubleshoot the duck and make a duck that worked. But the whole shooting schedule was already set up. Now, if your leading man had been an actor, they never would have had the first day's shooting set up until the actor was chosen and that was signed on the dotted line and everything was set. But because it was a puppet, the whole thing just went on, in spite of the fact that we didn't have a duck that even worked. So to say I had to work quite hard on that movie, 7 days a week, 4 hours sleep a night for 9 months, you know, is probably the hardest thing I did. But it was pre-CG. Everything that we did was in camera. And for an animatronics person, to suspend your disbelief, I think that with Howard, I can say 100 things that I wish that we could have done better with it. But I truly think that we kept him alive in every single shot all the way through the film. So with how hard it was to do animatronics in those days, I'm very proud of what we achieved.
We were talking about this earlier. I had supper with Irvin Kershner 3 or 4 years ago, just about a month before he died. And it was very interesting, and the topic of conversation was how proud he was of, with Frank Oz creating Yoda and being a puppet for one of the first time ever that a puppet really carried a percentage of a movie that we all believed in and were happy to believe in, and he was extremely proud of that. And it was a cinema-changing moment, I think, that I can't think of any other films prior to that had puppets in such a major role that you actually went with and believed in. So,
Before Dark Crystal.
yeah, and before Dark Crystal too.
And Mike Carter, who was
Bib
Fortuna.
Fortuna, yeah.
He told me at a convention only about 10 years ago that because they were animatronic characters at the time, they were very nervous about it. And I thought I was doing such a marvelous job with Ackbar, but it turned out that when I went home every night, they had an actor come in and do all of the dialogue and all the parts, just in case I screwed up and they couldn't use the alien as that important character in the movie. So even as far as that point, they were still very nervous about animatronics and, you know, could they carry a part? Could they actually stay alive to that degree, that extent?
Any more?
All right, well, I guess one more quick question before we break today. What are the chances of a Greedo and Admiral Ackbar team-up movie?
Hey, yeah, we're all for that, aren't we, too? Yeah, I'd come out of retirement for that, actually.
I was doing a convention in Australia when they were talking about the Force Awakens, who's going to be made and everything. And they said, oh, is Ackbar going to be in the Force Awakens? And I just laughed and I said, well, if he is, it's going to be some young guy who was my age when I was doing it, because these suits are very hard to do. And then I got a telephone call saying that I want to reprise the role. And the first thing I did was go and get the bicycle out of the back shed and pump up the tires to start building up the stamina just a little bit so I would survive the experience of being Ackbar in these costumes. So. You had a question?
I was just wondering if any of you had any memorabilia from the set, or?
Well, yeah, I unusually, because you didn't want anything from in the first movie, any movie you were on in the 70s, you couldn't wait to get home. You really didn't want anything from the set, it was all junk. But in my little scene, I thought my bits in Star Wars were the bits that were eventually all cut, because I was originally in all the stuff with the original Jabba the Hutt, who was an actor, an Irish actor called Declan Mulholland, and we did quite a lot of filming with Harrison and Alec, which was all cut, so I thought I wouldn't be in the movie. I thought that was it. Because we did the now iconic scene late on a Friday afternoon, the crew couldn't wait to get home, I couldn't wait to get home, we were all tired, so we shot it very, very quickly. But I remember the gun that I used in the scene, and it was quite cool because all the weapons were little German Mausers that had been decommissioned and were used by the props department with bits of plastic on them to make them look like ray guns. And so Harrison and I sort of had childish gunfights go ping, ping at each other for about 10 minutes, which was quite cool. But I had young kids at home, so I thought, oh, they like that gun. So I took it home and gave it to my youngest boy to play with. And so they played with it for a couple of years. And then after about 2 years, one of them snapped the plastic muzzle from the gun. So I threw it in the trash. Do you know how much that would be worth? I remember a bit over 250,000. I needn't be here today. I would have been on my yacht sitting there. So yeah, yes. I now would steal anything from a movie set as long as it was but we can't, of course, because we signed confidentiality. Did you take anything, Tim?
Oh no, it's very serious now.
Very serious, yeah.
I didn't have anything from the Star Wars. I had things from Return to Oz. I had one of TikTok's chest plates and things like that. But I'm in the weird position where I'm now meeting the young guys that I inspired into getting into the business. And I was working with this Spanish kid, Javi, and he got into the film business because he'd seen Return to Oz as a kid, and that was his favorite movie. And he was helping me do something for a BBC project, and he was so good that I dug around up in the loft and I found this badge, and I wrote on the back of it, "Have for work above and beyond the call of duty, you are now a member of the Royal Army of Oz," you know. And I handed it to him, and he burst into tears, and was like, "Hey, man up, because I'm not going to hug you." But it's really fun. I went into, I was trying to get a job. It was a small little film that was being made in Holland. And I went into the producer's office, and he also had a big poster of Return to Oz up on the wall. And I went, "Oh, that's a nice poster. Why do you have that there?" "Oh, that was the movie that got me to go into the film business." "Oh, well, I just decided how the wheel was working. I made TikTok and I did the things with Jack Pumpkinhead. Is that good enough to get a job on this movie? So he gave me a job. So.
All right.
Right.
Well, thanks, Paul and Tim.
Thank you so much.